Township of Howell's Planning Board, Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. Opening statement, please.
I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 7th, 2022, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Members of the public will have a chance to ask questions and comment on applications once the chairman opens the hearing up to members of the public. If you wish to ask questions or comments on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability. You will be sworn in and you will need to provide your name and address. For anyone calling in, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself. This meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai?
Here.
Mr. Cristiano?
Here.
Mr. Dorado is absent. Mr. Greenfield?
Here.
Mr. Nicastro is excused. Councilman Bonovich is excused. Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Spanville?
Here.
Ms. Talenti?
Here.
Chairman Tannenhouse has been excused, and Chairman Husser.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'd like to follow it with a moment of silence and prayer for the men, women, and children of Ukraine.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Eileen, do we have any approval of minutes?
I have no minutes this evening.
Any vouchers?
No vouchers this evening.
Any correspondence?
Correspondence, yes, I have a few things. Number one, I sent an updated roster to everyone this week. If everybody could just check their information, if anything needs to be added or corrected, let me know. And I'm sure I'll be sending out another one in the near future. The board, we mentioned last time about going back to in-person meetings. I don't know if anybody wants to discuss it tonight or if we've had thoughts on it. The zoning board is going back in April. They're actually going on their second meeting in April because there's someone that's already noticed for the first meeting in April.
I guess that would be the only thing I would bring up is, as far as that stuff goes, how are we with that situation?
I have two cases scheduled for April the 7th, but I told them not to do their notices till I let them know if we've decided to go back to regular or not. So,
members of the board, if you're inclined to go back, I would say that the way the zoning board did it is probably the best. Gives us a little time to get all the notices together, talk to the applicants. So if you're going back, I'd recommend like your second meeting in April, like the zoning board did.
Fair enough.
do we need to take a vote on that or anything, Ron?
Yeah,
I mean,
Brian can just direct it as the chairman.
yeah,
Okay, perfect.
perfect.
All right, the next item, I sent an ordinance on Tuesday that the council was going to introduce Tuesday night. It's regarding definitions and rules of general applicability of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Howell. It's to add a fulfillment warehouse center, warehousing, and distribution into the definitions of the ordinance. And we need to comment on it tonight because our next meeting is after theirs. So we have to comment on suitability with the master plan.
Mr. Chairman, just a note on that. The township's ordinances on warehouse are dated. You know, they were adopted in an era where a warehouse meant something specific and did not contemplate the distribution centers or fulfillment centers. So what this ordinance does is create a definition that splits all of those different kinds of warehouses into individual elements and defines them. So you can't come and say anymore, I'm proposing a warehouse and your warehouse is broad enough for me to do a distribution center or fulfillment center. So that's essentially what it is bring the definition sections up to, 2022 realities of the definitions of a warehouse.
Great. Any questions?
And then we would just need a motion that it is substantially consistent with the master plan.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano, Mr. Cristiano? No, you're muted.
You keep muting yourself, bro.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
yes,
Ms. Talenti,
yes,
and Chairman Husser.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the only other thing, I just sent another email tonight regarding that site visit for Hammer's property. He wants to hold off his hearing until we go back in person, but I don't know if you want to do it soon or not, but
I don't think there's any rush,
rush.
with the spring coming. I'd rather it dry up a little bit over there. and
Okay,
take
then we
advantage
can
of it.
wait and address it later because he won't
Okay.
be on an agenda till at least the end of April, beginning of May, so.
Perfect.
And that's really all I have in correspondence.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any resolutions?
No resolutions.
Okay, we'll go right into submission waivers. The first being case number SP-1101 for Alair Road LLC for a minor site plan.
And that's Mr. Alfieri's case.
Okay,
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. We have Ms. Newman's report, and I guess I'll defer to her if there's any items that she thinks we need to submit to be deemed complete.
Laura, do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have a February 8th, 2022 review letter. The submission waivers are specifically outlined in item 3. And although there are a substantial amount of items, I think it's important to note that this is basically a conversion or a use of the building. There's no site improvements proposed. So based upon the nature of the application as currently submitted, I take no exception to the granting of these waivers for the purposes of deeming the application complete.
thanks, Laura. Members of the board, any questions? So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes. Yes.
thank you. Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
yes,
Ms. Talenti,
Yes,
and Chairman Husser.
Yes,
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Al. The next submission waiver is for case number SD-3001, Robert C. Weiss for a minor subdivision.
That's Mr. Cohen's case.
Laura, do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, similarly, we have a February 7th, 2022 review letter. Submission waivers are also outlined in item 3. I had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Cohen about this. Most of these items are not applicable as it relates to phone number, email details of the applicant. Mr. Cohen has agreed that he would provide that on a subsequent submission. And because this is a minor subdivision, And given there's no improvements currently proposed, any future would have appropriate details. If in fact any deeds were required, they would be provided upon that time. But at this point, most of these appear not applicable. So for that reason, I take no exception to the granting of these waivers for the purposes of deeming this application complete.
Thank you, Laura. Any members of the board have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make motion.
Thanks, Joe.
Second.
Thanks, Rob.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
yes,
Ms. Talenti,
yes,
and Chairman Husser.
Yes,
Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
Night.
Okay, our only application this evening, case number SP-1090 Ecosystems LLC for a minor site plan with ancillary bulk variance relief.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair, Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. We were hearing this is the old Concord limousine site. My client bought the property thinking that he could move right in and open up his business because the property was in relatively good shape. We were at the December board meeting. The board professionals and board members had various comments in an effort to improve the site, clean up the site, provide additional buffering, etc. We have since submitted revised plans in an effort to address all of those comments. And Eileen, I don't know if you've brought in Mr. Musto and Mr.
did.
Resnick.
I will bring them in for you.
Thank you.
And before we go any farther, Mr. Spanville has certified that he's watched the video, so he is eligible to vote.
Thank you. And we have Steve Musto is our engineer who will be on momentarily, I believe. And Brian Resnick, who's the principal of the applicant, is also will be on if you have questions of him, but we don't intend to call him as a witness. Ron, do you need to re-swear any of the professionals? They were all involved in the first hearing.
No, I just remind everybody that they remain under oath. And before you start, just for purposes of the record, just state your name again.
Steve, are you there?
I'm there.
Okay.
Ron, I wasn't at the first hearing.
You're not voting.
Well, do you need to swear me in?
You swear or affirm the testimony about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Steve, you there?
I'm here.
Introduce yourself, please, to the board again before you start your testimony.
My name is Stephen Musto. I'm with the firm Insight Engineering out of Howell Township.
And you provided testimony at the first hearing, is that correct?
I did.
Would you summarize for the board the changes that have been made since the last hearing?
Absolutely. So from the past hearings comments, we added bollards around the sidewalk or within the sidewalk for the parking spaces that are adjacent to the building. We added the split rail fence to act as a barrier for the parking spaces along Route 33. And that's in addition to the existing hedgerow that's there today. We added 4 ADA spaces and sidewalk improvements to provide access into the building entrance. We supplemented the hedgerow along Route 33 with additional evergreen shrubs to supplement a missing section of hedges. We propose additional evergreen screening along the sides and rear of the property. This is to provide screening of the storage of the vehicles at the rear. We proposed green giant arborvitae, and that will act as a nice dense buffer in addition to some of the buffer that is on the neighboring site. There was a comment to provide a variety of species rather than just one species of buffering plants, and we'll work with the board's professionals to provide a variety. We removed the 5 parallel spaces that were along the main the main drive aisle, and those were the oversized spaces that were used by the previous user. We revised the parking striping at the rear of the building to provide tandem parking for the applicant's business vehicles. And these would be located here in the back and screened by this new buffer.
You
So,
want me to put up the plan or anything?
Steve,
oh,
you-
I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen. I
No.
apologize.
That's better.
okay, what document are you referring to, Steve?
So this is the site exhibit that was most recently submitted.
Is that
Um,
A10, Eileen?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
A10.
thank you.
All right, so just to reiterate, here is the proposed buffer around the rear of the property. And here is the revised parking lot at the rear that I was just speaking about. The 5 tandem spaces that we removed were along this main drive aisle right here. So our new total of parking spaces is we provide 80 parking spaces, and that's including the 4 ADA right here at the entrance. By removing and revising the parking striping, we now provide 30-foot drive aisles on 3 of the sides, and that would be this main entrance, the rear, and the front of the property. We have an existing 25-foot wide aisle here that we could not increase without other waivers and variances. And we also provided a circulation plan for the SU-30, the garbage truck, and the tractor trailer. There was a comment about the non-residential architectural facade requirements. And if I could go to the architectural rendering that was prepared by Parallel Architectural Group.
That's A8.
Thank you. So as part of the ordinance, it requires at least 4 elements to be incorporated. And the 4, or we've chosen more than 4. So I'll go through and list them. So textured masonry walls that's existing today. We propose a cornice along the roof line to accent the roof line of the building. We propose a projecting metal canopy, and this will have lights, uplights, and lights underneath the canopy to light up the sidewalk area around the building. And this is located at this front left corner and the front right corner, and it wraps the sides of the building. We provide a trellis containing plants that will climb up the front facade of the building. And we provide lighting fixtures, as I previously said, so some uplighting and canopy lighting. And then there is an existing belt course, which is these lines underneath the windows, and it's colored masonry and breaks up the facade of the building. So that's a summary of the changes since the last year.
Steve, one last question about signage. There were originally multiple signs on this property proposed, is that correct?
Correct.
What's proposed today?
We propose one compliant building sign right here, and we propose to reface the existing freestanding sign at the entrance of the property.
Now, as it relates to any of the technical comments contained in the board professional reports, do we have any issues addressing them as a condition of approval?
No issue at all.
And with these plan changes, have we created any new design waivers or variances?
No new ones. We actually corrected or improved a few of them.
Okay, and you testified to the variances and waivers at the last hearing in December?
Yes, I did.
So unless the board wants to hear the testimony again, I'm going to suggest that we skip that Any other changes that were made since the last meeting or anything else you need to introduce so that the board hears any new testimony?
None other than the changes that I just went over.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have, Mr. Chair.
So-
I have one question. From an environmental standpoint, this is the first time I'm seeing this, and it's just out of curiosity. It's not going to change anything as far as I go, but why is there, I'm seeing it in the links here, a response action, RAO, response action outcome, dated January 14th, 2022 by Mid-Atlantic Engineering Partners. It's for an unrestricted use entire site. I guess my question is, why was the site even considered to have, some type of remediation or investigation being completed on it?
Steve, do you know the answer to that? If not, Mr. Resnick does.
No, I do not know the answer.
Mr. Resnick, are you on?
Yes.
And you were sworn in at the last meeting as well?
No.
Oh, you weren't? Okay, then we need to swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And Mr. Resnick, you're a principal of Ecosystems?
Yes.
Okay, and you're obviously familiar then with the RAO that the board member questioned. What was the purpose of obtaining the RAO?
When I went for a mortgage before I purchased the property, because he used to do detailing of the limos and stuff, and there's a floor drain in the building, the mortgage company or the bank that I went to wanted, they wouldn't give me a mortgage without it. And it came up clean. Just cost me a ton of money for no reason.
Yeah, work for that bank. All right, well, no, thank you. That clears up everything for me.
Thanks, Brian.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of summarize, I would concur that they had previously gone through a bulk of their testimony at the last meeting, where our main concerns was elimination of that parking along that one aisle to have a conforming width. We had some concerns with the need for bollard and/or protective device for those parking spaces against Route 9. We also wanted to confirm the area of the outdoor storage and the adequacy of the screening there. And I would note that the applicant, although he's no longer sharing his screen, you could see the screening that was provided. So with that and the applicant agreeing to the technical comments within our report, I have nothing further at this time.
Thanks, Laura. Jen, yeah.
Mr. Chair, as you know, our office had some concerns about the architecture as well as the screening. I agree with Laura. The architecture is much improved over what we saw the last time they were here. And I agree with Laura with respect to the screening. So we have nothing further from our office either.
Great. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Sherry, do you have anything?
No, Steve said he'd work with me on the species. I didn't want one kind around the entire site. So, and I did ask for the street trees to be put in the back since they can't fit in the front. So he also is agreeing to that.
Great. All right. Is there any questions from members of the board?
Yeah, this may be a dumb question, but I'm assuming triple stacking the parking is acceptable because it's a fleet use. Otherwise, having parking that way wouldn't really be functional. Is that fair to say?
Mr. Seaman, I believe that's the area of the storage. So as they had previously noted, that's why it's actually stacked. It's not really going to function as parking, but it's going to be more for their storage. And essentially, like you said, like if it's their own fleet vehicles, that's why they would have them in that tandem style parking.
Anyone else? All right. If not, I see we have two people in the public and one's Christine Bell. I'll open that up to the public.
I think the other one's Isabel, who also is from my office. She's just watching.
Then that's.
Do they need to come in at all?
I don't think so. I mean, unless this is gonna, Christine's here just in case I have to bow out for a couple minutes, but I think we're cooking along, so I think we can just keep going.
I just had to give Rob the
Yeah, so
I guess
Being
we have
known.
to officially open it to public anyway, and then
we do.
you want to open it or?
Yes, please.
Okay, for any members of the public who want to ask questions or comment on this application, please use the raise your hand feature. If you're calling in, please use *9 to raise your hand and use *6 to mute or unmute yourself. You will be required to give your name and address and be sworn in.
Another Christine Bell joined.
Mr. Chairman, the only other thing, just because it wasn't in our prior report and that I just want to make mention of, is that the applicant, it was in our prior report, is seeking the waiver of relief and would be providing a contribution to not install sidewalk along the Route 33 frontage.
Eileen, let's close the public portion. There's nobody here.
Okay, the public has now been closed.
If there's no other comments, Sal, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you. Your board professionals did a great job in making my client spend more money than he wanted to spend, but it is a significant improvement to the property as it was when he bought it. So we request that the board grant the approvals.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion.
Thanks, Joe. You have
A second.
Thanks, Rob.
Sorry, that was Rob?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talenti,
Yes.
and Chairman Husser.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.
All right. That was it for applications. Any master plan update?
Just that we had a meeting last week to kind of go over the rough draft that we prepared of the land use element. We got a number of comments plus some comments back from Matt Howard, which have been incorporated. I would say by the end of the day tomorrow, we should be done with that to have a draft out to everybody to review. The circulation element, the counters were down, they're up. We got the data. We're in the process of compiling the data on the classification of the roadways. That should be done next week. So we are looking like we're in really good shape to have a public hearing either end of March, beginning of April.
Jen, I mean, it's awesome. Is there something after circulation that you guys are looking to tackle?
Not right now.
Okay. That's awesome.
I'm getting ready to do the agenda for March 17th, which is our next meeting. So I don't know that
Won't
we'll
be done
ready
by
for
then
that.
because we'd have to notice 10 days in advance.
Right.
So I would say either the following,
That's April.
meeting.
You're into April.
yeah, so then do the first one in April.
Okay.
Great. Is there any reason for executive session?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. At this time, I will entertain.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we'll see you on St. Patrick's Day. Everybody have a good
Bye,
week.
guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Bye.